When we fail, we blame it on ourselves. We wonder why we're so pathetic, so weak, so incapable of getting things done, and over time, we start to think that maybe we're destined to fail for the rest of our lives. If you can relate to this in any way, then pay close attention. What you currently have is a belief that it's your fault for failing, and what's dangerous about this belief is that it often sends us into depressive downward spirals where we feel like something is wrong with us deep down inside. Like maybe we're broken, maybe we're destined to be a loser for the rest of our lives, all of which cause us to turn to our bad habits more as a way to cope, which causes us to fail even more. If you want to break out of this loop and start seeing progress in your life, then you must replace this current belief that you have with a more constructive one that will empower you and help you succeed even when you mess up. And that's what I want to do today. I want to show you what this belief should be. Now, over the years, I've worked with hundreds of people one-on-one, and over time, I started to see a common trend. People that fail constantly tend to act in the same predictable manner. They almost always fail, then they mope around in self-pity for a couple of days, and then they try again, hoping that something is magically different this time around. They hope that maybe, just maybe, the motivation that they get from watching a 10-minute YouTube video filled with scenes from various boxing movies layered over epic music allows them to stay true to their word this time around. When they fail yet again, it's to no surprise because of one simple thing. They didn't think about their strategy. You see, it's usually not a question of whether or not you are mentally strong enough. It's usually a question of whether or not your strategy is effective enough. It's a question of how you do things, a question of who, what, where, when, and why. What does this mean? Well, a couple of years ago, I struggled with losing weight. I would tell myself that this time was different, that I would quit eating junk food and start eating healthy for good. But after just a couple of days, the urges would start reappearing. I would start hearing voices from the kitchen. Eat me, eat me, eat me. And no matter how hard I resisted, I would always eventually succumb to my urges and end up snacking. My strategy back then was to rely on pure willpower to resist my temptations. I eventually discovered that a far more effective strategy was to remove all the snacks from my house so that they weren't even an option I could consider late at night. And I also decided to eat delicious meals that were high in protein and fat so that I felt satisfied after eating dinner and so I could stay full longer. The moment I started adjusting my strategy was the moment I started seeing lasting results. You must apply the same sort of thinking to all of the areas in your life where you're currently struggling. Yes, willpower and motivation do play a role, but your strategy is equally, if not more important, when it comes to long-term success. If you're someone who can't seem to focus on studying when you're at home, then play around with different locations, the length of time of which you study, the time of day you study, who you study with, and even what you study, if that's even an option. Try out multiple things so you can figure out which strategies seem to produce the best results. Once that happens, stop looking around for something new and just stick to what seems to be working. An additional tip to help you think about strategies is to ask yourself the following question. How can I increase my chances of success without having to rely on more willpower? What can I do differently this time in regards to who, what, where, when, how, and why in order to tip the odds in my favor? And remember, it's not a question of why you're not mentally strong enough. It's a question of whether or not your strategy is good enough. Now, it is important to note that mental strength and willpower do play a role to some degree. In fact, there are some strategies that focus on increasing your baseline level of energy, such as getting better sleep and fixing your diet. That's something for you to experiment with as well.